Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Paint with Sean. So, today we are hoping to finish. That's not usually something that is a goal for me, but I feel like we're so close and we've just got a few more things to put in here. So, we're going to add a little fence line to the back here and sort of create another layer of distance for our little cabin. We've been working on the path and we've got it up over to this bush over here, and then we're going to continue the path up in and through some rocks over here. So I purposely stopped the path. Typically you would want to create the whole path and then just put the bush in front of it is the easy way to do this, but sometimes you change your mind as you go and you need to adjust in the moment. So I'm going to come back and try and get close to this same color of path color and put it in here. And if I get it over the bush a little bit, that's okay. I can repaint the bush right back over it. So I wanted to do this on purpose, show you guys a little bit of a way to sort of adjust what you've got going on in the moment sometimes. Every once in a while, you know, things change and we decide a little bit different. And so that's the magic of painting here, is you get to just create the world as you go. So again, we left off, we're pushing this over here. So I'm running out of my brown color, so I'm just going to put a little bit more on the canvas, and we're just using these cheap acrylic paints. You can get them at any real paint store here. Nothing fancy going on here. But this color down here is some brown and a little tiny bit of yellow and some white. So I'm running out of white from the last video here, so I'm going to put a little bit more of that on the board. And you can see I've got paint all over the place on the board, so as long as you know where your wet and your dry spots are, it's usually pretty simplistic. So we're going to make our rocks today. We're going to make some big rocks going on over here, some big stately things right in the front, and we're going to have our path sort of disappear in between those. So we're going to need some white, we're going to need some brown, some black. So I can push these over here so you guys can see what's going on. Okay, so the closer we get to the front, guys, the more detailed we want this stuff. Okay, so these rocks over here that have kind of some detail going on, they're semi-close. These ones that are getting a little bit closer are even more and more detailed. So we just want to continue with that detail work as we come through. So first thing we're going to do, I like to use the fan brush more because it has some good real estate on it and we can cover some ground with it. So we're going to grab a good puddle of this brown color over here. Looks like we had some black in the middle of that, so that's not what I'm looking for. So when you start putting colors on top of colors, things happen. So I'll just get a good chunk of white, and that'll bring it back down to that sort of lighter color here, and we're going to just touch into the yellow a little bit and add a little bit of yellow, and I want that a little bit darker on the brown side, so we'll add a little more brown to it, and we'll just play back and forth until we sort of get it to kind of the color that we want. So we can sort of measure it up against what we've got going on down here, and we can always adjust this. We can always add and subtract color and darken it and lighten it and all that kind of stuff. So don't worry about, did I get it perfect? Is it the exact match? Oh, it's kind of close, and things change as you go into different scenarios, okay? And so I'm going to put this all the way down here to the bottom, and we're just going to continue our path on over here. And I'm going to try to go over as little of this bush as I can, but if I do end up going over some of it, that's okay. I really don't want to have any of that blue color going on. And then we're going to build the path to come sort of uphill a little bit. Okay, and then we're just going to sort of fill in all this with a little bit of color. Okay. And that looks good. Okay, so we're going to let this kind of blend in from behind the bush there and just sort of touch the edge of it a little bit, and that's okay. So then we can come back in with some other, you know, colorations. We can add a little more white and a little more yellow going on and sort of lighten that up a little bit. We can add a little bit of color variation going on. You can put some strokes in it to give it some motion to it if you want. it's your world. You get to play with it a little bit. So what I found is just you get some on there, and I'm going to get a little more yellow in this because it's kind of a brownish color, and I want it to be a little more yellow to it. So this is the fun, guys, is you can just play a little bit and throw some different colors in there and see what it sort of comes out to be, and need a little more brown. So it does take a lot of paint, guys. I try not to over pour on my paint just to help it go a little bit farther in the long run, but it really does take quite a bit of paint to do these paintings. So that's why I kind of stick with some of this cheaper paint. You need a lot of it, and so yeah, if you're kind of strapped for cash, you can go with the cheaper paint. Alright, okay, so we'll just get a little bit of color variation going on here and there, a little bit of light, a little bit of dark. Okay, it doesn't have to be any real structure to the pattern. Okay, so we just want to kind of keep adding some more light and dark areas to it, and get a little bit going on in here. And these lights and darks, again, guys, really show depth and contrast and things moving and going on. Okay, so it's okay to not really have a plan. That's what I love about these landscape scenes, is you don't have to plan it all out ahead of time. You really can just kind of sit down at the canvas and say, where do I want to put some color? What do I think it would look like in this area? What if it had a little bit of shadow here? And I just put too much on there, so I'm going to take some off. Okay, so you guys can see here we've got our good little path color going on. Again, I'm going to come back over this purposely with some bush color. Okay, so we're going to repaint this bush a little bit. Okay, and again, this path direction is important. So when we start to want this to climb a little bit, we just have a little more upward angle. Okay, and we can really change to our heart's content. So if you get too much, you can wipe it off, and while the paint is still wet, it's very forgiving. Okay, so you can do some real cool stuff going on in there. Okay, so we've got a little more, and we can again kind of play with this to our heart's content. We can add little white pieces, and maybe that's too much and we don't want that much. We can smear that out a little bit, and a little white spot there and a little dark spot here. That's how real dynamics are built. Okay, it's just this little alteration of light and dark. Okay, and you can have it wherever you want. Okay, so sometimes playing with it while it's wet isn't always the best. It just kind of blends things if you touch it too much. So, all right, so we've got this going on here. We've got our bush over here. So I'm going to leave this dirty brush for my brown color just in case I do want to come back to it again. Oh, there we go. So I've got this set up here on top so I can just get to this little corner over here. So again, we've got to make a dark color here. So we're going to get some of our black, pull our green over here. Okay, we just want to have real dark color. And again, we're just going to create a little bit of bush overlay that just covers where we put that little bit in there. Okay, and then we can grab the other side with some white right on the other side of that dirty brush there, and we can add some little highlights in and make it look like that never happened. Okay, so you guys can really play with this again to whatever degree you want this to do, and you can always change your mind. That was really what I wanted to show you with that one little piece right there. Okay, so however much you want to put in there, you totally can. So even if the path doesn't look exact, that's okay. We can always add some detail later. Okay, so let me get my brush over here nice and washed out. Only needed it for a little bit. Alright. And these paper towels really do a great job of just getting the water out, and it also lets you know, hey, if I don't have any color on there, this is a clean brush, it's just wet. Okay, so depending on, you know, what texture you want, sometimes you want it more wet, sometimes you want it more dry. And this little part right here, I purposely didn't cover it up to make it look like one bush that just kind of grows up in there. And if I want to separate that, let's just do this while we're talking about it. I'm going to come back in and grab a little bit more of this white, okay? And really just takes a little bit, okay? But if we define this edge of this bush right here, okay, where this one in the front seems to just stand out a little bit more, it gives the indication of, you know, sort of an individual thing going on. So wasn't quite the effect I was looking for, but that is a way that you can kind of do that sort of thing to individualize the bushes as they're going on. So if we want to try that again up here, let's try this a little bit again. So if we want to say maybe there's a little, you know, bush happening right here, when we create these edges, this is what makes it look like its own individual bush. Okay, so this little arcing pattern here makes it stand out compared to that that's behind it. Okay, and if you want some more dark color, you can tap the other side of the brush, and you can throw some dark back in there. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so these are pretty fluid in the way that we put these things together here. So if you wanted a little more white, you can tap a little more white into it. Okay, but again, you don't want to cover up all the dark. So be careful getting carried away with doing those sorts of things. So I do want a little more dark down here. I really don't like how that turned out. Okay, so again, guys, it isn't always going to be perfect the first time you do this. You may have to really put this in with a little more pressure and sort of get that dark really accentuated in there. Same dirty brush just on the other side. So I'm really working with two sides. Okay, and again, you can cheat. You can do the same thing with rocks. You can have a brush that has dark on one side, light on the other side. Okay, and just give it a little bit. Okay, just that little bit. If I really want to separate that, make it real nice and light. Good enough. Okay. So again, guys, don't get stuck on perfection. You may have an idea in your head, and sometimes you want to push a little bit more for it. That's okay to try some things, but one of the toughest things as a painter that I've found is just, when are you finished? You seem like you can continue to go forever and just keep painting. So at some point we'll finish this. So we've got our little path here. We're going to add some nice big rocks going on over here. All right. So we do have this brush that we can use for rocks. It's good for a little bit bigger rocks. So again, you can use whatever brush you want. I think I might find more of a filbert type brush, a little more in-between brush. I don't think this is a filbert brush, and it has some, oh, it's like literally falling out. Maybe I don't want to use this brush. My hairs are coming out of my brush. Oh my goodness. All right. So let's just get a little bit of water on this just to kind of make it a little bit more fluid and moving. Is this actually coming out? These are good. Okay. So we're going to make some big stately rocks over here. All right. So I want to create, again, a little bit of depth. So I'm going to put one that's pretty big over here on the far side of the path. And then we're going to have another set that covers the edge of the path and kind of is in front of it. So it kind of looks like the path goes between and behind and off into wherever it decides to go. Okay? So rocks again, we're just going to get our dark color in here. We're always going to start with something that creates that hard line of dark. That's what really defines the edges of these rocks. Okay, so we've got our light coming in from the right-hand side. So again, we want a big rock that kind of ends just over the edge. So it looks like it's just sort of sitting on here. And if you really want to start at the bottom, wherever you want that rock to sit, totally up to you. Okay, and then I want sort of a big rock, right? Bigger than some of the other ones. Okay, and you can make this as big or as small as you want it to be. All right, but we really want to have that nice strong edge over here, so make sure you got plenty of paint going on. Okay, and rocks are not straight, so don't worry about having it be an exact perfect oval on the top. And again, the magic of painting is if your first stroke is not perfect, you can just paint right over it. Okay, so just want to make sure this is a nice solid line on the back side here. No question that that's where the rock ends. Okay, so again, I'm just going to do maybe 2 rocks over here. I like the one, but it looks kind of too uniform. And again, I don't want it to go too far back. I want to leave plenty of space here for that other rock to come over in the front without overlapping this one. That's what creates that separation. Okay, so I'm just going to put another little rock formation in the front of it. Have it come down just a little bit. All right. A little bit right there. And we'll give it a little base to it. Okay, so I've got sort of a couple rock shapes going on. And again, we can, you know, throw these in here wherever we want. If we want another one, little rock going on right there, and maybe there's another bigger one back in here. You can play really as much as you want with this. Okay. So I just got a couple rock shapes going on. All right, now, again, we're going to go back to the light. So that's what's going to create that highlight that makes it look more like a rock shape. Now, while I've got this dark color on here, I'm going to go ahead and finish out using that. So I try to do all of that same color as much as I can while I have it on there. It just eliminates the need to wash the brush as much. So I want to come over the top of this stuff and sort of down into this area and have it kind of finish out in here. Okay, so again, rocks are not even, so we don't want them to be perfectly round, but we do want a nice solid shape to them. Nice solid edge, so we can see exactly where that rock is. So I'm just using pure black on this for right now. You can make this whatever color you want. But you want it to be real dark to stand out, okay? So we're gonna make sure we get a lot of black going on in this one, and we'll bring it down in here and have it sort of just drop off the page down here, okay? And we'll come in and we'll clean this up as we go. So we're just starting with the general shape, and then we'll make it a little more clean and crisp. Alright, so it is picking up a little bit of that brown from underneath, and that's alright, because most of this is going to get covered up anyway. So we just want sort of the indication in the shape of some things going on. Alright, I'm using a lot of black over here, but if I run out, which I feel like I'm going to, we just reload. Okay, so let's throw a little more black on there. And this is the fun, guys, creating these layers. That was one of my goals within this painting today, was just to show some depth. You know, we've started all the way in the back with the sky, and then there's this layer that sort of comes around to this layer, and this disappears in the back, and then we've got this giant set of mountains up here, and another pathway that comes up, and it's broken by the bushes, and it sort of drops down here, and then we've got this layer and the things going on everywhere. Okay, so it just, the more layers you create, the more depth it looks like it has. So we're going to continue putting our black in here, really getting this just kind of blocked in with some color. Okay, so this is not a fancy part of painting here when you create these shapes, but it really is important to want to try and have as clean edges as you can. Rocks are very hardscapes, especially when it's nice and close like this. You really want to be able to see exactly where that rock is and all the little details in it, okay? And my grandma's a painter, and she's 97 years old and can't quite do the painting anymore, so I usually meet with her once a week and sit down and do some painting with her, and she always has the funniest little questions about, you know, what I think about while I'm painting and where I come up with these little pictures from inside of my head and all these sorts of things. And one of the funniest questions I never really thought about is, what do you do with the edges? Right? Because down at the edge, it's all white at the bottom. And so I said, well, I can't see them, so I'm not going to do anything with them. And she said, well, that's the right answer for you. So again, within these paintings, guys, you get to really decide, you know, what you want your world to look like and what you're going to do with it. And there's no real wrong way. That's what I absolutely love about this, is I get to just separate from the world and sit out here and do my own little painting thing, and I can hang out in my garage by myself and talk to you guys, and there's no right or wrong. There's only just an enjoyment of the time that I'm getting to do this. And this is really an inspiration for me, guys. Most people have kind of different definitions of inspiration that I do, but an inspiration for me is enjoying the act of doing something regardless of the outcome. Now, when you're good at something, it's easier to enjoy it because the outcome typically comes out better. But even if you're not that good at something and you simply practice, the enjoyment a lot of times comes from the improvement, not the first time being good at it. Okay, so don't worry if you're not that good at painting the first time. All right, I'm still not that good. But I'm having a good time out here hanging out with you guys. So again, just sort of a general rock shape, and we can kind of break this up with some highlights as we go. But you can see now that this just creates a little thing, like where does that path go? It just kind of disappears over here behind this big giant rock that's now in the way. All right, so we're just having a little bit of fun with this. Again, no right or wrong here. We've got about 7 minutes left, so we'll try to get through the rest of this little detail, and if we have to go a little bit long in this video, I'm just going to commit to finishing this painting today. All right, so we've got our nice dark color in there. I'm going to rinse this brush out. I don't want the black in there because we're going to come back to the pure white, and we're going to put some highlights on here, and this is really where the fun starts for me. I absolutely love making rocks. They really seem to be something that I enjoy doing, and I get to sort of just make them come out of the page as I wish. So really enjoy that. So we're going to get some white here, knocking over paint. I have a true paint studio going on here where it's just like messy everywhere and bottles all over the place and brushes and paint and just scattered mess. No real plan of attack, and I absolutely love it. I have a great time out here with this paint stuff. So we've got our little paint stuff going on, little rocks. So I'm going to switch back to a little bit smaller brush for some of these smaller rocks, and again we're just going to go straight to the white itself. And I don't need a ton of paint on here because I'm just doing little tiny rocks. So if you get a lot of paint on there, it tends to smear. And you really want it to break. You want it to not be an even coat of color. Although you do want the one side to have that solid color. Okay, so just a real light curve. And then we'll just kind of blend it back into the rock. Okay, and again, we can come back in here and put some more dark color in as we go. Okay. I don't have a ton going on here. But the more that this breaks, and the more variation there is, the more that it will look like it has holes and depth to it. Okay? So we've got these other little rocks. And in this one I sort of see two rocks going on. Okay, so I'm gonna bring this one down to about here and sort of blend this back in a little bit. And then I feel like there's another little rock right here, sort of in the front. Okay, and I'm gonna put a little bit going on over here. And we're gonna come back and get a little more dark in there and just kind of play back and forth, light and dark sort of situation. So we'll come up here to the top, bring our white down in here, and I really want to leave this black line right here. Okay, so very important that when we go to put this on, we don't cover up that dark on the one in front of it. Okay, that's what really allows it to look like it has some separation. Okay, got some things going on over here. Our rocks are looking really good, but this nice white area is what creates that separation. Okay, so we've already got some little shapes going on, and we can again sort of play with this as we decide that, you know, there's another little area going on over there and whatever happens. Okay, and we're just gonna put a little color in here, and then we'll come back with the darker colors. And maybe we can just use our other little brush so we can kind of play with this as we go. Okay, so I'll touch in a little bit of this black here on my nice thin brush, and I'm going to mix this with a little bit of the white so it's not quite so straight black. I want sort of just a muddy gray. Okay, and then I'll just kind of touch in here a little bit as we go. So it's not a perfect everything. Okay, we don't necessarily want a rock that's exactly even. They don't come out like that. Okay, so lights and darks, you know, you can get real crazy and put some real dark spots in here and make it have some real dynamics to it. Okay, so these little pieces are the extra depth that it adds to your paintings that really make things look realistic. Okay, so we're just going to add a little bit of some light in here. I like that one, it looks good. Okay, so again, we can piddle with this forever. We've got it pretty well set up. I like that it has some depth going on. If there's a little bit of definition we want to create right here, maybe can add some of that, and that turned out to be brown, not black. So I'm going to throw some black in there. And you can see that just instantly creates like a little shadow in there. And again, if you get too much on there, just get some of the other color and you can come back in and, you know, sort of play with it and separate those things out. Okay. None of this is permanent. That's the magic of it. You can always play with it and change it and adjust it as you want to see fit. Okay. Now, if you also want to add some extra detail, you can put a couple little upward strokes of some of the green color. Okay, so I've added a few little grass details in here, so we can go ahead and do that while we've got our brush into some color here. So I'll just rinse it out. We can start with a fresh color here. So we want this again to be fairly dark in the back. Okay, so we want to get some of our black. And it looks like I'm sort of running out of my green color, but when the brush is wet, a little bit of paint actually goes quite a lot farther. All right, so I've got sort of a dark green color, and the water allows it to be thin like ink. Okay, so then you can just get a real clean pull, and it's just an even little distribution. Now, if it's not working, you may need either a little more water or a little more paint. I think I just needed a little more water to thin this out. Got a good little bucket of paint going on. Okay. I want this to be very defined. Okay. Like these just little bushes sticking out here. And we are finished with time, but we're gonna finish this up a little bit. So we'll just keep going. So hang tight with me here, folks. We got a few little pieces that we're gonna add in here. Okay, so just a little bit of grass going on and some pieces that look like extra little details going on, okay? And so I'm going to add some of that dark color, and then we'll come back with the light color here in just a second. Okay, there we go. We'll just have a few of those going on. And we want that dark to really stand out for us. So then we've got something to come over with the light color. Okay. Get a little more water in here. Touch into my black just to add a little more paint to my bucket. Okay. We're going to put a little in the front here. Okay. So the farther down below the thing, the farther away it looks like it is. Alright, so we really want to make sure where we want that to land. Got some tall ones. Maybe they come out in front like that. Okay. So our little shrubbery looks pretty good, and we can, you know, put this as much as you really want to. But I'm going to wipe this off, and we're going to go right back into the white. And typically grass doesn't miss the snow. So we're going to grab some of this. And again, we've got a wet brush. And I do take off quite a bit of the water, but we still want to have a fairly thin thing, and we can just kind of highlight them. Okay, this is again what makes them stand out, and really we notice them. Okay, so that one got a little bit too much in there. That's all right. I just want to highlight. Okay, so real light pressure. Okay, just little highlights as we go. And if you ever run out of ink, you can ink. It's almost like ink, it's so thin, but if you run out of paint, a lot of times you can just flip your brush over. Okay, so we want those to sort of stand out a little bit, but nothing too crazy. All right, so again, we're going a little long today, guys. I appreciate you, but I really just wanted to finish this thing up without having to start another episode over, because we've really been working some good work on this painting, and I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. So let's see if we can get to a finished article here. All right, so we're going to wash this brush out here. And now we're going to come into our big rock. Now, again, I've got my dark brush here. I'll make sure it's completely washed out. It looks like it is. Okay, so I've got a little bit bigger brush just so we can cover some more area with less time. So again, we've got our dark on there. We're just going to add some light, and we're really going to just play with this. Okay, so this is where it really starts to get fun in creating some things of however we see this individual rock formation coming out. Okay, so this little dip, when it starts to dip down, I just leverage that. Okay, so I'm just going to use that little piece. Okay, and again, we can kind of blend this in as we see fit, and then we can kind of just make this a little edge. Okay, and things can sort of happen. And I'm going to come up here, and I see another little one right there. I've got another one that maybe kind of comes into it. Okay. And we're just putting a little bit on here to kind of create some of the starting points of this. Okay. So these are just the right sides of the rocks that are really going to be sort of nice and shiny and standing out lots. All right. So every time we create this little gap here between the dark and the light, That's when we're going to start to see these rocks really start to come out. Okay, and so you want to see how would the light shine on them. That's what it really comes down to. Okay, so there's going to be different parts of it that stick out based on where the light hits it, and where that little part is blocking the light. That's where the real dark parts are going to be. Okay, so I'm just kind of mapping out a little bit of this, and then we'll play with it as we go, and we'll start to create a little bit of form to these things. Okay, so the bigger ones take a little bit. They're not just one side and the other side sort of situation. It's typically a lot of rocks. Okay, so we might have more than one going on. Okay, and I'm just kind of keeping everything sort of moving in the same direction. That's what we tend to see in nature, all right, is when we have these differentiations in space and how things are lining out. When we pay attention to those is when we really start to see the true gift of nature, which is hard to see a lot of times because we're so used to it. Okay. Okay. I don't know if that made sense. I sort of drain off and paying attention to what I'm doing here. So, okay, and we're just getting some pieces going on in here. Okay, now we've got some sort of shape going on in here. I want to come right up on this little edge over here. Okay, and I don't want to leave too big of dark spaces, but you also want to leave some so that it has that dimension. But the bigger the gap, the deeper the space seems to be behind it. Okay, so even just with that, you can kind of see we've got some things going on here. So I'm going to take my same white brush and I'm going to get a little bit of the dark on it, and then I'm just going to mix it. Okay, so you can turn this over and mix it just a little bit so you get sort of this medium in between color. Now guys, this is the difference maker. The two colors really stand out too harshly. It's when we start to add this third color in here that things begin to sort of connect. Okay, so I'll take off some of that edge there and we'll play this one in over here a little bit. Maybe this one comes down over here. This one kind of connects in. This piece isn't quite so flat looking that way. Again, there's no real rhyme or reason to this most of the time. It's sort of blocking in some of these different pieces with a blend of the colors. Okay, this different shades of light and dark is what creates the ups and the downs. And man, I've said this a million times, it just puts depth in the thing. Okay, so I only put a little bit of paint on this, and you can see I'm kind of getting all over the place, but it's starting to really give itself some form in here. Okay, so again, we're gonna get a little more dark in there and pull into some of our light. It doesn't have to be the exact same color. Okay, so we're just going to pull down even in some of that, and kind of blends up into what some of this has going on. And we're going to just keep playing with it a little bit here and there and creating pieces of depth. Okay, we got a real good little start going on here, and you want to work on this a little bit while it's wet, all right, because that's going to allow your colors to sort of blend. The stronger these lines are, the more defined the rocks are, the more defined those edges are. All right, so if you want a nice strong defined edge of something, you can do that. All right, so you can see we're starting to get some real good variation in here, so I'm just going to kind of play back and forth between my light and dark colors. Okay, if I see an area that looks maybe a little bit too dark, I might throw some light in there, and if I got some areas that look a little too light, I'll throw some dark in there. Okay, so this back and forth color variation is really what creates this strong sense of a rock for me. So again, I know we're over time a little bit, guys, so if you gotta check out, that's okay. I appreciate you hanging out with us here. This has been such a great little project that we've been working on together for several videos now. I think we've got 7 or 8 videos maybe that made up this series, and it's really been a fun one for me because we've gotten to show a lot of different pieces. You know, how the depth really comes out is, honestly, I can't say it enough, but that is the true magic of painting, is this light against the dark, and you don't always have to have a plan for it when it comes down to nature. Okay, nature is so forgiving in the painting world because it's not really uniform. It's easy to kind of, as you can see, I'm just sort of throwing this on here willy-nilly, and it just makes a lot of cool stuff going on. So I want to finish up with this rock real quick, just so we can kind of call this one adjourned. And I just want some real strong white colors going on in here, and make sure that we're, and every time I give these little pulls, you know, it just creates another little dimension to it, right? So don't worry about playing too much. You can very easily, but a lot of times with the rocks, boy, that's what really does it. All right. Sometimes it needs just a little more light and dark contrast, and there's another thing going on that you just want to show happening over here, and whatever it may be. So I like that rock. It looks pretty good. I do want to throw a couple little highlight branches in the front, just as a detail piece here. Okay. So again, I'm going to come back into my dark color over here. I'm pretty well running out of green. To get some green. One little drop, that's all I need. So I've got a nice wet brush over here, so I'm going to mix up some of this kind of a darkish navy type green here. And we're just going to throw a couple little detail pieces. Okay, so I really want the top of these to show up. Okay. And again, this just adds another layer of depth. So I'm just starting them down here where the dark spaces are, and just pushing, you know, different pressures. All right, you can really show some good differentiations in here with height and pressure and all these sorts of things. Okay. So you guys can play with these a lot. This has been sort of a fun little painting to show the possibilities and really just spend some time together. I really enjoy hanging out and talking with you guys as I paint. I've done so much painting by myself, and you know, it's fun. But it's nice to have somebody to share things with. So if you guys end up painting, please come back and comment. Show me a picture of one of your paintings. I would love to see if somebody even tries to recreate some of the stuff that I've made. I've watched so many episodes of Bob Ross and really just enjoy the hell out of his stuff, but very rarely do I actually try to recreate his paintings because they're very specific to him, and I kind of like to come up with my own. So let's go ahead and throw a couple in down here, and I want to sort of vary the height of these. Grass doesn't always grow the same height. It's not always the same distance apart, so I want to thin this down just a little bit to make this run just a little bit more for me. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. And get some of this kind of going on. Yeah, there we go. In between a little bit. Okay. Now, I've got sort of some grass pieces going on here. Again, you can put these into your heart's content here, but I'm going to, again, try and keep finishing this up. The details, guys, we can sit here and play with them for days, but at some point we've got to walk away and call it finished. So I'm going to get my white on here. Again, I want to make sure this is really thin, lots of water in it. Thin paint will stick to a thick paint, so if you just go straight into the paint, put it on there, and you want a color to go over the top, make it wet. Get your brush wet, and that thin paint will really just kind of go right over the top of it. Okay, so real light touches. You don't want to cover up that white or the dark. There we go. Okay, so just that little brush, little bit. Okay, and again, I don't want this to get too thick on the brush and have to push very hard. I want this to be very, very thin, so I can just barely touch. Give just that indication of some white stuff going on. I like it. There we go. Again, this light color really, really stands out against that dark. Alright. My family turned off my garage light on me, so our lighting might have changed a little bit in the video, but that's okay. We're just about finished up here. So we've got our structure here. The last thing I want to do is just a little fence in the background here. Okay. Mostly because it's just fun. That's that last little layer of depth going on here. So we've got a nice thin paint. We're going to get a little bit of brown and a little bit of black. I want kind of again, a darker color. We want to start with that dark color so that we can show the light that's going on. All right. Now, we want to start with the posts. And we want the posts closest to the house to be the longest post, and then we want them to get shorter to show that this sort of diminishes away as we go. Okay, and I want the posts to be fairly even with the top of this ridge line here. So this first post I'm going to have be fairly tall, and then I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller as we go. Need some more paint. And again, don't worry if these are the exact color, if you're mixing colors back and forth. Okay, so again, the height of this is the most important part. And if they're not perfect, that's okay. It could be a crooked little old fence post there. And we just want these to get smaller as we go. And they just sort of disappear back in here into the nothing. Okay, so you can see that really makes it look like it's shrinking off into the distance as we go. Okay, so we're going to come back into our color. And again, we want the posts to be nice and wide here, and they're going to get closer and closer as they go. Okay, so we're just going to connect it there, connect it there, and we can have these posts be exactly perfect or a little bit crooked. This could be an old fallen apart fence that nobody really knows about anymore. It's had its day in the sun. Okay. I just want these lines to get thinner and thinner as we go back. A little bit less obvious. Okay. I don't want it to disappear too fast. We just got some things going on in the background here, and again, when we finish this, we'll come back in and we can add in a little bit of our highlight color and kind of make it disappear a little bit even more. Okay, these don't have to be perfect, just little indications of a fence going on back there. And we'll put one that sort of connects it to the house. Okay, there we go. All right, and even that up and down a little bit in there just really gives it that indication of some movement along the way. Okay. And we can even add the fence out that way if we want, but I'm not going to do that today. So with our little dirty brush, we're going to come right into the white color here. Okay, so it's not going to be a pure white, but we just want the indication of some snow on that thing. Okay, so we just want to put a little bit of white in here and lighten up that color. Okay. And again, if you're getting big streaks on this, get yourself a little bit of water and just kind of mix that out a little bit, and it'll thin out that color real quick. Okay, so we don't want to erase the white or the dark. We just want a little bit over the top with some of this light color. So you can see I completely erased that right there. So I'm going to stop, grab some of my dark color, come back in, and just add those indicators again. Simple as that. Okay, so there aren't any mistakes, real guys. Okay, we don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents. That's what Bob said. And the farther back this goes, the less you really need to touch it. Okay, we just want some of these indications of some things going on. A little bit of white here. Okay, we're just gonna have these little pieces kind of disappear back there. Okay, so I really like that. That looks good. And boy, I hate to say I call this a finished painting, but I think we're pretty close. I do want to add a little bit of texture down here just to break this up a tad before we call it a day here, guys. So again, one last time, I really do appreciate your time hanging out with me, and this has been such a great painting. I really had some fun times with this one. And it's amazing how long it can take sometimes to really get a painting completed. So don't worry if it seems like it's taken a while. It happens. It really does take a while. So I'm just going to play back and forth with a little bit of some sort of light and dark color so it's not so flat in here. And now that that color is dry underneath, I can put some of this stuff on here in a little more choppy method. I'm not quite stroking, it's more of a dab. It's more of a patting motion. And you can kind of blend that in a little bit. Okay, and it creates some of this very sharp contrast without the smooth lines going on so much. Okay, so I'm going to throw a little bit more dark in there on top of that. We'll get a little bit going on. Okay, so these differences in coloration are really what gives that painting the realism. If you just leave these as flat, kind of boring colors, then it gets really boring. It doesn't look real. It doesn't have any depth to it. So we really want to make sure we're adding some little pieces to it. Bob never really did because he was on such a time crunch with his stuff. So we get this magic of the home features that we can decide how long we want to play with a painting. Okay, so again, I'm just sort of adding in some dark and light variations just to make it look like some things are going on. I don't like it to look real boring. Okay, so we're just going to get some dark and light going on in various places and change it up a little bit here and there. Again, if you don't like it, you can put another little bit of color over the top. just come back and grab a little bit of white and put some more over the top there. Make it a little lighter in some of those areas. So I appreciate you guys. I know I've said this several times, but it really is enjoyable for me to sit down and kind of show some of these techniques, and it doesn't have to be something that comes out perfect or exactly like you planned. Okay, allow some things to just go on that happen. All right, a lot of times people get stuck in, oh, this doesn't look perfect, or I was hoping it would be better than this, or whatever. I've heard so many crazy things that people talk about in their paintings, and then, you know, they show it to me. It's like, wow, this thing is actually pretty amazing. Like, why are you not excited about this? So a lot of times we're a little bit overcritical to ourselves and what we put out compared to what we thought it was going to be like. All right, so don't do that to yourself. Sometimes it doesn't come out the way you want it to be, and sometimes, you know, it takes somebody else looking at it and appreciating it for you to be able to see, wow, maybe I'm a little bit too hard on myself. Maybe I am a little better than I realized. Okay. So again, I really like painting because it gives you a hard copy of what you've done. It literally shows you, here's where you didn't do it as you wanted to, and then you can try to get better at that as you go. Okay. So I'm just putting in a little bit of water line here with our final little details, and again, we're just kind of bringing some of this up onto the shore so it's not quite such a stark contrast there. So I'm going to finish this one off and send it off to YouTube, and everybody will be able to watch along with you. So again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this little paint series. This was the first one we did sort of piece by piece, and I'll keep coming back and doing some more of these for you because it's really been an enjoyable process for me, and I get to share some of this magic with you guys as we're going through and figuring out how these techniques can be combined to really make these amazing little landscapes. Okay, so I'm going to end it there, guys. We're going to call it a finished painting. I really enjoy this. It's something that's got a lot of depth, and that was one of the main goals of this. It's got a lot of overlay, it's got a lot of technique in there, and we really got to share some good times together creating this piece. So thank you for hanging out with me. This was an extra long finished video on this one, but again, we really incorporated all the pieces that we were looking for as we made it up as we go. So I appreciate your time one more time, and I will see you guys in the next video.